Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and I'm the author of Own Your Power Day by Day, which is a meditation manual. And I am so happy to be here again. I've been gone for about 2 weeks to a little cottage in Pennsylvania. And we have a break once a year. We go to this, hi, Chairman. Um, we go to this lovely little lake in Pennsylvania called Lake Idlewild, and which Bob, my husband's grandfather, bought 73 years ago, 1947. And it's one of these places that has um, it's so comfortable. You can bring dogs, you can bring babies, you can bring friends. Nobody has to worry because, hi, Christine, welcome. Um, the I am glad to be here. I was very happy to be away, Pennsylvania, the lake, looking at the water, looking at the sunlight on the water, the undines coming towards, rushing towards shore is probably my favorite scene in the whole world. So, and the peace and the quiet generally, not always, but generally, is wonderful. Um, but it it's just a very, very relaxing place because we don't try to do anything. And this year was the first year that I actually had the privilege of hosting my son, daughter in law, and grandson for more than 24 hours. They stayed with us for like 3.5 days. And it was magnificent because those of you who follow me on Facebook have seen a few pictures of Max, and it just is such a joy to be around him. He's only 4, but just a delightful, delightful child. And anyway, but today's topic is, how do you know what your life purpose is? And as typical of everything I do, I can only teach from my own personal experience. I started my career as an adult, fresh out of college, as a first grade teacher. Not that I was trained to be a first grade teacher. I graduated as an English major from the University of Michigan, and ended up uh, married and followed my husband through to a program in South Fallsburg where he wanted to go into hotel management. And so I had to put him through school. And even though granted tuition was much, much cheaper at that time, the as I went into that town, town of 7,000 people at that time. I don't know what it is now, but it's kind of in that Hudson Valley area, a little bit extended off to the west from the Hudson Valley area. That's so very popular right now because of COVID is kind of scattering people from New York City, and so they when I went to interview for a bank teller's position, which was about the only um, professional position that was available in that little town, he looked at me, looked at my resume, looked at me, looked at my resume, and asked me, he said, "Do you think you could teach first grade?" And with all the courage that I could muster, I said, "Of course I can," not even knowing what was involved in that, because I had one education class under my belt, nothing more than that. I was an English major. I talked about great ideas, but school was going to open in 1 week, and they did not have a first grade teacher, and they needed one. And so I ended up being the best qualified person in town. I was able to stay there 3 years. My second year was an absolute delight. Had I had students like I did the second year, I probably would have stayed in teaching the rest of my life. They they handpicked a group of students for me. They gave me the elementary school principal's daughter, the the supervising principal's daughter, the sixth grade English teacher's son, the gym teacher's son, and then an assortment of students from very high achieving to very low achieving. But I discovered that I could actually use the high achieving students to tutor the low achieving students while I walked around the room trying to help those that I felt needed my help. I gave them 6 worksheets a day. I took them home every night, sorted them. I don't mean sorted them. I mean, graded them and put the A pluses on and a star, and just gave them as much positive reinforcement as I possibly could. That was, to me, a a a career that ended up being very challenging because the 3rd year, I did have a couple, at least one student that I remember who was extremely disruptive, and that became very, very, difficult for me. Um, Today, he would probably be, it was a he, identified as an ADHD. The child was just all over the board, just went in so many different directions that could not be contained, could not be controlled. There was one time where I actually saw him, just took my eyes off of him for a second, and then all of a sudden he had his hand one on either desk and he was doing cartwheels, flipping himself over in between the row of desks, and just an excess amount of energy that was phenomenal. That Though those years ended up being tremendously influential to me, because it was through those years of teaching, the 3 years that I had of teaching the 1st graders, that I actually absolutely came to love little children. And up until that point, I I loved my little sister who was born when I turned 18, and, she but in terms of, did I want children myself? No. Did I feel any draw towards having children in the future? No. I saw myself strictly as a career person, but having the experience with those 3 years of teaching absolutely gave me the benefit of seeing what a brilliant mind a child has and how they unfold. In those years, now, granted, I'm sure things are different now, but in those years, uh, children were expected to learn to read in 1st grade. They were given some enrichment in kindergarten. And in fact, the one kindergarten teacher called Mrs. Doherty, she prepared them just phenomenally. And Mrs. Gridley was the other kindergarten teacher. And she too had, no, I take it back. She was the 1st grade teacher. Um, she just she wrote poetry, and she instilled a love of poetry in the students that she taught. But the for the children really were expected to read when they got to 1st grade, learn how to read when they got to 1st grade. And so I kind of sat down at my desk, and before school opened, and one of the other 1st grade teachers came bounding in and said something about, oh, pre primer. And when she left, I put my head on the desk and said, "Oh my God, what is a pre-primer?" Because I hadn't known at that moment in time, or if I had, I forgot. But my saving grace was the fact that I was given the lesson plans of the first grade teacher who had retired and whose place I took. And I was effectively given a blueprint on how to teach first grade. It was broken down into 15-minute segments, 20-minute segments, 30-minute segments. So, with that, I really modeled my teaching on what I had been given from her. She had been a very strict disciplinarian, and I wasn't that, but nevertheless, I maintained a very calm control over the classroom. And so I recognized that I did have a gift for teaching. And it was from probably those years, from the 67 through 71, that well, I guess 70, that I realized that, yes, teaching is something that is in my blood that I didn't even know that I had a gift for. So, but fast forward into the next career, because when I moved to Washington, D.C., where I'm in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. Right now, I'm in Fairfax Station, Virginia, which is about 14 miles due west of D.C. I did recognize that I at first thought that I would succeed in on any job interview that I went. What I didn't count on was the fact that they were only interested in two things. How fast can you type? How accurate are you? I didn't type fast at all, maybe 32 words a minute, and maybe that was with 6 errors. No one was interested in me, and, because the all the positions required secretarial skills, which, I mean, yes, I could type, but that didn't mean anything. So, effectively, when I ended up, taking my first job in Northern Virginia, well, actually, it was in DC. I lived in Northern Virginia, but in DC. It was at Pat Gilbert Personnel. I was basically trying to place people that had equally as indifferent skills as I had. And the uh, the irony was the year that I spent there, I also recognized that nope, don't want to have this the rest of my life. I'm not interested in this. But lo and behold, I answered an ad for real estate. And this was a brand new concept in real estate. This was an employee owned company. And in the process of interviewing for the job, what I discovered is you had to put up money to join the company. You had to effectively put up $2,000 before you would be accepted to join the company. And the and I became so enamored with it that I thought, well, I'll put up 4. And then I put up 2 more. I put up 6. And anyway, the long and short of it was that when I stepped into real estate, I literally thought that I would live and die as a real estate broker. I never really saw anything different for my life. Never really thought that there was anything outside of this career. I felt I was a natural for it. My father in the 50s had built homes, and he always had a second job working on some type of housing project, whether he was remodeling a home or whether he was building a new home, typically building a new home. And at that time, if you took $1,000 profit, you made a great deal of money. And unfortunately, again, I can't remember what the economic situation was that happened, but there was one home where he underestimated the cost of materials because materials skyrocketed. And he was such an honorable person that he did not feel that he could pass on the skyrocketing costs to the people. So he ended up literally, if I remember correctly, not only not making any money, but having to pay out of his pocket to finish the house. So, but nevertheless, I felt housing is fabulous. I'm going to stay in housing and stay as a real estate broker. And then little by little, something started happening to me. A dissatisfaction started to grow in me. And I feel that the dissatisfaction came strictly from overwork. There was nothing that I would not sacrifice for my clients. My clients came before my family. My clients came before my health. My clients came before God. They were first. Everything in my life was dedicated to satisfying their needs. For the most part, when I started as a beginning real estate broker, I worked with people buying their first home and or people coming out of bankruptcy wanting to buy. And so, and when I started in real estate, the real estate broker absolutely did everything. He qualified the people. He was the like the finance director before he handed them over to the mortgage people, and he presented the he meaning we presented the contract. And negotiated a contract and sometimes had to work till 2 o'clock in the morning to run papers back and forth. There were no faxes. There was no email. There were no cell phones. You did everything by hand and person to person. And I think as I think back, it feels to me as if it just wore me out. And I just got to the point where I started feeling absolutely just fatigued from this type of environment. But yet, I didn't feel I could stop. I didn't feel like there was anything that I was qualified to do. Did not feel like going back to college. I had tried the first year when I actually had tried to. Um, I started on my master's degree, and the first year I moved to Virginia and realized that when I went looking for the possibility of job openings, they said, "Oh, there's 6,000 applications and no jobs. They're all filled." And then the next year, after taking my the courses in reading specialization, then they told me when I applied again to the schools, they said, "Oh, now there's 10,000 applications and no jobs." So effectively, I realized that was a dead end. So that's when like I said, well, like I went into Pat Gilbert Personnel, and that's when I found real estate as my career. But in the 80s, again, something started happening to me. I found that I was not at all satisfied with real estate. And every single time that I walked into a bookstore, what drew me into the bookstore were the books on the metaphysical subjects. Except at that time, there weren't a whole lot of subjects yet. This was the 80s. And this now, one child was born in 1981, the other one was born in 1984. So I had so pretty, small children to also raise at the same time that I'm trying to work a 60-hour week. And so the challenges were many. My husband, God bless him, helped me out as much as he could. And I tried to make all my showing appointments in the evening or on weekends when I knew I could count on him to be home so that I could wa- take care of my children myself as best as I could. I did have to hire babysitters. Some of them ended up being an absolute disaster. But when I found that I was being drawn to these metaphysical um, subjects in the bookstores. I mean, literally to the point where if I would walk down the aisle of a book shelf, a book would land at my feet, or it looked like it had a neon light that just kind of blared out and drew me to it. So I started to really recognize that something inside of me was changing. What I thought was my life career till the end of my life was not necessarily so. And I started to pay attention to my feelings. And that's when I discovered that you really have to take into account how you feel about something because it's your feelings that connect you to God. Your feelings are a direct connect to God or a DC to G as I called it. And those feelings started to, like I said, turn me away from real estate and turn me towards spiritual pursuits. But I was stubborn. I thought, nope, this is the career I've chosen. This is the career I'm going to pursue. And even to the point where my health started to give way. And when I bent over, couldn't straighten up again, walked at a 45-degree angle, even that didn't get me to stop because I just figured out how to continue on in real estate. But it was finally the factor of money that it didn't matter how much money I earned. It seemed like my debt load was getting higher and higher and higher. And so I can remember the year that at the beginning of the year, I was $25,000 in debt. In 6 months, I was $40,000 in debt. And I recognized that if I did not do what Spirit wanted me to do, I would bankrupt us. I was convinced of it. So effectively, that was the year too that uh, I kept thinking, okay, well, because I was listing and selling and doing property management, um, what was being asked of me was to give up the property management because that took up a tremendous amount of my time for only 20% of my income. My guide said no. They said no. You're to give up the listing and selling. So, and those of you who have who absolutely get the presence of your guides and communicate with your guides, and those of you who may have listened to some of my previous talks just prior to my going on vacation know that I have a very strong relationship with my guides. I heard them front and center. It wasn't, there was no question about what I was hearing. There was no doubt in my mind that this is what was being asked of me. I was being told to get out of real estate. And all I kept thinking of is, how am I going to make it? How am I going to make it? Since at that time I contributed, um, still at that point, I contributed more than 50% to the household budget. And and spent every penny of it. So effectively, I knew that it was not something that I could continue arguing with. When I saw my debt increase in spite of my earnings, I realized that spirit's going to get their way. They are going to get what they're demanding of me. They're going to get that from me. So effectively, I then started to, then I had to do exactly that. But I had this crazy thought, I've shared this before, that if I could only pay my bills for 3 months, I could pay them for the rest of my life. And that's exactly what happened. The first month, I felt like I was choking. The second month felt a little easier. The third month, it was just fine. Nothing, absolutely nothing happened that where I felt I could not pay my bills, even though I had given up 85% of my earnings, because my property management only, uh, I think I said 20%, but I think it was closer to 15%. It only brought me uh, 15% of the amount that I earned. So, the first thing that I want you to do is absolutely trust your feelings. And after that, what you have to do is pay attention to what your guides are telling you. Pay attention to what it is that you are thinking about, what it is that is being given to you to move in which direction. They are very, very clear if you give them a chance. And by giving people a chance, what you have to do is you have to be, by giving your guides a chance, you have to be quiet. You have to go into the stillness and pay attention to what is coming through you. Your own members of your own family could be guiding you. It could be your grandparents. It could be a favorite aunt. It could be um, a boyfriend who passed away in an accident. Um, there's no end to the number of beings that could be guiding you. So you absolutely have to pay attention. I didn't realize it, but I'm almost going on 30 minutes. So I've been trying to cut these talks to 15 minutes, and unfortunately, I never do. But I'll continue along this same theme on Wednesday. No, I guess today is Wednesday, so I'll continue on Friday. I thank you for watching. Those of you who came in late, um, please do go to the beginning, and I will see you on Wednesday. Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and I'm the author of Own Your Power Day by Day, which is a meditation manual. And I am so happy to be here again. I've been gone for about 2 weeks to a little cottage in Pennsylvania. And we have a break once a year. We go to this, hi, Chairman. Um, we go to this lovely little lake in Pennsylvania called Lake Idlewild, and which Bob, my husband's grandfather, bought 73 years ago, 1947. And it's one of these places. Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and I'm the author of Own Your Power Day by Day, which is